Hey everyone, this is Jody Vesley again here with the HeartWay Pastor and Missionary Caregiver podcast. We have done 3 seasons so far of this podcast, and that's all been since around really the start of February of this year. I don't want to get caught up in one singular topic, and so every 10 episodes we start a new season. And so this season 4, we're going to get into the need for care. The need for care for yourself, for others, the need for care. And so, HeartWay is all about care, hence the name HeartWay Pastor and Missionary Caregivers. Everything that my wife and I do, it is revolved around care. And each episode, we're going to bring out different subtopics, different topics of care. And so as we get into this today, first off, I just want to make sure you're in the right heart and the right mindset when you listen to these things, because, I do think, anytime you listen to a podcast, it's a time for self-reflection. It's a time to think, a time to reflect, and whether it be you're driving somewhere, you're doing some type of workout, you're doing some work in your house or your yard, whatever the case may be, when you're listening to this podcast episode here today, just take a few minutes and few seconds here and think on, how might God speak to my heart today? How might God speak to my mind today? Am I willing to self-reflect right now? Can I take just a few minutes and focus in on these things? And so I hope that we can. Honestly, each of these episodes I prepare and record are honestly therapeutic to me, and sometimes I benefit, weirdly enough, from listening to them later on, after I record them, kind of listening to it as I edit it, as I add the background music, as I prepare the image for the episode of the podcast that I'm going to share with my podcast hosting. And so it's a time that's therapeutic for me too. And so the thing is we need to see that everyone needs care at times. God takes care of us. If you look at Psalm 23 in the first 6 verses, especially you can see that God takes care of us. The Lord is my shepherd; I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And in verse 6, surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. God takes care of us. It's no mystery. If you're a Christian and you believe in Jesus and you follow Christ and you're on this journey with God, you've experienced God's care. And you can see it in your life, and you can think on those times that He's taken care of you in ways that He's taking care of you now. Also about care, in the church members take care of one another. I love this passage in Acts chapter 4, verses 32 through 37. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had. With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and God's grace was so powerful at work in them all, and that there were no needy persons among them. From time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone who had need. Joseph, a Levite from Cyprus, whom the apostles called Barnabas, which means son of encouragement, sold a field he owned and brought the money and put it at the apostles' feet. And so, this is just, I think it's just a beautiful picture of care in the church. And I think about this time, and it just seems so selfless, so much good is seen in this. The right heart, the right mindset, and in that culture, it just was so awesome to see that picture. And it's an encouragement to me to reflect on that and think on that and think about where I'm at in my mindset, in my life of gratitude, in my life of giving. Where am I at in that process? Where am I at? How can I function to a level like this church did in Acts chapter 4? And I think that's a healthy thing for us to reflect on. What about those times when care is needed, though, or it would be incredibly helpful for you, but there's no one to go to in your church? In these cases, God is always with us. There comes some times we just need practical care from people, and God uses people to provide that practical care. And sometimes, in a lot of cases, maybe this care can come from people in our churches, but maybe this isn't always the case. Practical, helpful, needed care that maybe just aren't in your local church body. Sometimes we just could use care that isn't available from church members, and that God doesn't directly provide, but can indirectly provide through others to us. In this season, I want to focus on areas of care that we need or could greatly benefit from, but aren't generally available to the masses without, some sort of payment. And so today we're actually, with that idea in mind, we're going to touch on this topic of care, of financial coaching. Financial coaching. What is it? How can it help? Why do it? How does it work? I'm not just a Ramsey Solutions Master financial coach, but I also have a degree in accounting and have a little experience in accounting for the corporate world. Generally, those in the financial world who are in the financial world who work in this atmosphere of finances are who we consider, decently well off. In American terms, I would not classify our family per se as decently well off. Yes, we own a home, but that was really just out of necessity in the situation that we're put in by God and in the economic situation of 2021. And with that being said, I can relate on a great level to living in an average to below average lifestyle of the typical American family. I understand what it feels like to not have a savings, and to see how it might seem unattainable to save what you would like to save. I understand what it feels like to not comprehend how to financially maintain and own a vehicle or vehicles. I understand what it feels like for being responsible for raising your own salary if you're a church planter or missionary that's had that experience. I understand what it feels like to not have health insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance. I understand what it feels like to live paycheck to paycheck. I understand what it feels like to not have financial peace. I've been through some of that, and some of it, I'm still in the midst of. Not that I don't have financial peace, but it definitely is a thing that if you aren't mindful of, it can, and you disregard and you become maybe a little careless with, or just put on the back burner, it can creep up, it can come up, and then suddenly you're in a situation where that peace isn't there anymore. With all this being said, I will tell you, in our current financial state, that we are in a difficult season. We unexpectedly had to move in the midst of COVID and change our ministry around and find 2 vehicles while having none beforehand, and with no plans to have one in our situation in Russia, and to have a home now, where before we were just renting an apartment in a foreign country, and just a whole slew of other stuff that comes with moving to and living in America. So we're still feeling that difficult season, a little over a year after going through the beginning phases of that transition. And inflation hasn't made that any easier. How is it that that we could help you, even though maybe we weren't as well off as a CPA might be, that's not in ministry, that has his own practice and whatnot. Well, the thing is I think it is helpful. I think it's helpful when you have someone that understands a little bit more of your situation, that has been through some difficulties, that has has and is going through similar things to what you're going through in terms of ministry, and how you've kind of been called to and chosen to follow this lifestyle that isn't going to be a lifestyle where you ever are really living financially in a situation like potentially what you could if you went off into the secular world and were focused on earning funds in that way. Not to say that God doesn't provide and God doesn't bless. He does provide. He does bless. But at least what we've noticed is He provides and He blesses financially. He provides and He blesses in other ways too. And so, thinking about this whole financial coaching thing and finances, it's just that, money doesn't need to be such a huge focus all the time for us in ministry, but that doesn't mean we can't ignore it. Like, we need to be wise with what God has provided us with. We need to be wise with what we're doing with that. And so for us, to be honest, we're not through all of Ramsey's 7 baby steps, financial freedom. Honestly, we're in baby step 3, and that's I feel like that's been a step we've just been in for a long time, which is trying to save an emergency fund equivalent to 3 months plus of our salary, which, when you don't make a lot above what you spend, it takes a while. And inflation definitely increases that time that it takes. And so I'm not here, with all this said, I'm not here to judge where you're at. Like I said, I can't be judgmental of that, whether you're baby step, whether you need to start baby step 1, just saving that initial $1,000 or $1,500 for an emergency, or whether you have $100,000 plus of consumer debt and student loans, or whether you're quite well off for whatever reason and you're just trying to do step 7 better of the steps, which is building wealth and giving. It's no secret that it's very helpful to make more money if you already have some money to work with, and so I'm trained in these situations to coach you whatever situation you're in. And so the thing is wherever you're at in the baby steps, you just need to be content with that, that you're in that journey, not content with like the idea of, well, I'm here, I'm okay with this, and this is where I'm stopping, but content with the idea of, it can take time. It can be a process, and maybe in your season of life, you're not going to go through these steps as quickly as you would like. It's just part of it, and we need to be content in all situations, and learn that contentment as Paul did. And so the need for financial coaching now is more helpful than ever. Financial coaches don't tell you what to do. They ask questions and give information for you to figure out what to do on your own, and then encourage you to follow through on that and provide accountability along the way. And so I was recently listening to a radio station in the Houston area, and the DJ mentioned that the impact of inflation, that it's made a drastic change to her family's budget and financial life. And she said she doesn't know anyone not being affected, and those who are saying aren't are lying. And, that really resonated with me, because I feel like I have been one of the few families really feeling the impact of inflation. It also made me think people aren't being as honest or don't know their real financial situation. Since that time period, I've been in touch with some others that aren't in this situation. Like for them right now, they've maybe gotten promotions or had job changes, or due to some other external influence, they're just not they're not feeling the inflation really right now. And I can say, that's awesome if that's, your situation. You can still benefit from financial coaching, whether that's your situation or whether that isn't your situation. I can say for our family that we've definitely been feeling the inflation. Honestly, one of our convictions has always been to do our best to stay out of debt. And I know that not everyone thinks that way. Some people, see benefit to debt and things like that, and couldn't imagine living their life without debt. According to financial experts, this is from an article I found. According to financial experts, the percentage of Americans in debt is around 80%. 8 in 10 Americans have some form of consumer debt, and the average amount of debt in America is $38,000, not including mortgage debt. And so it's been an interesting time here of late, especially inflation topped a 41-year high in June. A lot of Americans have blown through their lockdown savings through COVID on essentials like gasoline, which went up about 60% in a year. Electricity about 14%. Home cooked meals are around 12%. And I honestly don't want to think about what I spent on gas this summer. We traveled a lot, mostly for necessary reasons, and gas was really high during those times. Today we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of budgeting, because without a budget, it's easy to not have peace about your financial situation. Of course, you can be peaceful about your financial situation, but it's ignoring your financial situation. There's a small part in you that is like, hey, what's gonna happen? What are things gonna be like? Like, what is this wise just to ignore? And it's not wise to ignore. I think we all know that. But sometimes we just do it as a survival mechanism. Like, I don't want to think about it because it's just going to be sad, especially if you're in a situation of debt, and it's going to seem overwhelming. And so the danger of that is by ignoring it, it's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse. And what that can potentially lead to down the road is you're just delaying that feeling you're delaying dealing with something, and instead of dealing with it now in a way that might be more manageable, even though it seems unmanageable, is dealing with it now is the better choice rather than waiting. Waiting is never going to be the solution to getting out of debt. Like, the debt is just increasing. With whatever interest rates that you have on your debts, that's just going to keep increasing. The amount owed, and so you can end up in this situation where, when you ignore it and you're just making really low payments, it's not helping. It's not helping to get out of the situation. There's no plan in place. And so I want to encourage you to stop delaying and procrastinating and ignoring, but just to go ahead and deal with the situation. And like I said, it's just going to be better in the end to have a picture of where you're at and a plan going forward. Just that. Just having an understanding of where you're at, your real situation, and then having a plan going forward, that can help give you peace, rather than just this unknown of like, what are we going to do? What's going to happen? Are we going to lose our vehicles? Are we going to lose our home? Are we going to need to move? There's all these questions that you have, in the back of your mind. Like, what is this going to lead to down the road? Am I ever going to be able to retire? And these are legitimate questions that you need to deal with now and not put them off with, inevitable, like, with no end in sight. For us, I know what it's like to have a tight budget, and you're looking for more space in that budget, whether you are reducing some items or cutting some items or increasing income. And for us, I know we have been cutting for some time now, for well over a year, and as inflation has increased, this has complicated matters. What can you reduce or cut out? And a couple of those main categories that we can cut out completely, or reduce, that if you haven't already done so, is eating out and entertainment. These are easy categories to adjust and aren't necessities. We can get into a little bit of this because there's just so many like subscriptions these days and streaming services, and we tend not to think about that. And one of the things that we're implementing as a family, and it's just being wise with our finances, is if there's a streaming service, like if we have, which we do, we have more than one streaming service, and we at the moment don't really have anything that we're wanting to watch or will be wanting to watch soon on one of the services, we just go ahead and are cutting that subscription and watching others. And then when something does pop up, one or more things on that service that we'd be interested in watching, we cut out one of our other services and then focus in on that. And so this is really, it's not huge amounts of money, but it's just not wasted. Like, because, a lot of times we have a subscription we're paying, and, every month we pay for it, and then just think for a second, like, did I use that this month? Did I use it the previous month? Do I plan to use it this coming month? And when we start thinking about like what we're paying for, but like versus what we're actually using, there's no penalty for a lot of these subscriptions. There's no benefit to keeping it, as opposed to canceling it and then restarting it. Like, there's just no reason to not do that. other than, just taking a couple minutes to go through that process. When you're talking about eating out, I have thought about the figures of that and added it all up. I don't know if that'd be interesting to any of you guys, but let's go ahead and share it real quick. If it's going to be cheaper for most all families with kids, for families with kids, to cook rather than eat out. That's no mystery. And if you think, there's, we eat out for really cheap and all this. If you had a family of 4 and you managed to find a place to eat out for, let's say, $16, that would be really low for your family to eat out. A family of 4, and you times that by lunch and a dinner a day, and for 30 days a month, that's $960 per month just for lunch and dinner every day. And that's, eating stuff that isn't super healthy and balanced. Let's just say junk. Like that wouldn't be great for your health. And we're not including snacks and breakfast in that amount. Well, our family of 5, we currently operate, and that was a family of 4. Our family of 5, we currently operate on a $950 a month budget on eating out, groceries, toiletries, paper goods, etc. We include all of that into that amount. So it's definitely not cheaper to eat out as a family with kids. Don't believe that. And on the flip side, family of 5, it's easy to spend $60 at a sit-down restaurant, at least $30 at fast food places. And you think about this, and that's that's not even necessarily the best restaurants. So if you factored it in with different restaurants, nicer restaurants, and you average that cost out over 3 meals a day for a month, you'd be spending over $5,000 a month just on food, which is insane to think about. And maybe for you, it's not insane. Maybe you're in a situation where that's a normal amount that you can spend on that, and that's fine. I mean, if that works for you, then that works for you. But I think for most families of 5, that's an unrealistic amount. In terms of cutting and in the grocery stores, because you definitely see inflation there. Maybe you're already shopping the sales. Maybe you're not eating out. Maybe you're using little to no money already on entertainment every month, and you're still struggling at this point to make ends meet and to save. Because honestly, if we're not saving, we're creating situations for ourselves. Like if we're not saving for maintenance, if we're not saving like maintenance on our homes or maintenance on our vehicles, if we're not saving for our next vehicles, if you're not saving for those things, we're really not making ends meet. Because eventually you're going to be in a situation where you have to spend money because your car isn't running, and you're not going to have the money to do that. So you're going to be in a situation of getting into more debt. Anyways, so you definitely need to be saving. If you're not able to save, if that's not a part of your budget, the saving, it needs to be a part of your budget. So if you've already been cutting and you don't know where else to cut, consider these things. Can you downgrade your vehicle to reduce or eliminate your car payment, or just get some extra cash for a season? Do you have an extra vehicle that really isn't that necessary that you can part with? This would reduce insurance fees, maintenance costs, all while giving you some extra cash. What if you really can't cut anymore, or doing so would just make your life or your family so difficult that it's not really worth the stress and time? Well, in this case, you can look for ways to increase your income. Maybe you can sell some things you no longer need. Maybe you can get a side job. Maybe you can ask for a raise. I've heard of lots of jobs giving raises. Don't be afraid to ask. It's better to be honest up front about your situation than just to avoid the uncomfortable feelings that asking for a raise may invoke. Maybe you can change jobs. I personally noticed that in terms of online-only jobs, that there are jobs that pay much better, that have companies located in areas of higher cost of living that you can get while staying in your place of residency. I know people have benefited from this personally. So for ministers, the there's a lot to consider when adding income. For one, it may not be allowed. Secondly, it may hinder your ability to do ministry. Thirdly, it may hinder your family life. Fourthly, it may run you ragged and lead you into burnout. I think the main question to consider is what does God will? Obviously, God called you to the ministry and your place of ministry. Does He want to open up an additional opportunity to you in ministry, or does He want you to have a secular job? There's no singular answer for all situations and people. For us in our current situation, we feel like God wants us to stay solely in ministry, and that beginning to charge for what we're doing is going to hinder what God has led us to do for the reasons He has led us to do it. So unless we see no other way and are maxed out on what we can cut and add, we're not going to add a secular job. However, I don't think it is a bad thing to have an additional job as a minister. For a lot of people, it's helped them, and it's helped their ministries and their families. Just for a side point real quick, for those church planners and missionaries out there that raise their own funds, I know a majority of those that are in that situation lack funds from that deputation and fundraising. Yeah, a majority of the people that I know that do that lack. So this is an awesome time for churches and Christians to step up and minister. Some people are living extremely comfortable right now, maybe in step 7. I would encourage you to ask the question, where can I help? Where can I help? Have you asked that? And begin seeking areas to help in. Don't just ask, don't just get stuck in that. Begin seeking out areas where you can help. I'm sure there are people in your church that are in situations. Some may have made poor decisions. Some maybe they haven't made poor decisions. For most all of us, we make poor decisions at times. Other than us, I can promote several different missionaries to you that you could use your support, who are trying to figure out all this and how it's going to work. If you're a missionary in that situation today where you are lacking in terms of the fundraising, and you're listening today, I want to encourage you to reach out to us. We'd love to be able to promote you, your ministry, and your need to those who are looking to help. Missionaries are greatly benefited when others promote them and share their needs with those who are in situations to help. So that's a way you can help missionaries if maybe you're not in a situation to give right now, just promoting them to others, and eventually, there may be some people who are in the situation where they can give and do give. A lot of ministers don't have the opportunity to work a second job. Maybe the church doesn't pay enough or can't pay enough. If there are church members out there listening and knowing that you are paying your ministers lower than average salary in your area, you need to take steps to change that, and remember to take into account the taxes, the health costs, the housing costs, etc. that the minister has. So if they make the average salary in paper, the average salary in your area on paper, they don't actually make that in real money. So what I mean by that is they're paying more in income taxes than you think. If they don't have health insurance provided by the church, they're making much less than you would think. So please put some prayer and thought into what you are paying your ministers. Did you know that the median salary for a pastor, this is the median salary for a pastor in Texas, is just over $100,000, like right at $100,000? That's unbelievable. I don't know a single pastor, missionary, or minister that makes that much or even close to it. Not one personally, anyways. I mean, we hear of television pastors and whatnot, and we know about that. But personally, I don't know someone in ministry in that position that's the salary from the church. And I think we need to understand that we are way underpaying pastors, missionaries, and ministers. Good ministers are putting in more hours than you would think. Good ministers are more educated and trained than you would think. More good ministers are able to help people in a variety of areas of of stress and trauma and with difficult situations, and they do this on a regular basis. So just, put some thought and prayer behind what you are paying your ministers. I don't think this is an issue, but one person on staff shouldn't be paid in an extreme excess while another person on staff is hardly paid. Surely more experience and more responsibilities of the job are deserving of higher salaries, but let us not be the CEOs of the church world taking in high salaries while those around us are struggling. If you aren't sure what to do or would just like some direction and accountability in your finances, financial coaching is for you. If you don't have to, it doesn't have to take forever. Honestly, the first month or so might be the most intensive in terms of weekly meetings, but then that should wind down to monthly and semi-annual and annual meetings. Financial coaching is geared to help you towards living in a financially peaceful situation, not ignoring your situation, but being quite aware of it and peaceful about where it is and where it is going. Financial coaching can be beneficial for anyone if you're willing to think about it, about your situation and potentially improve your financial situation, then it can be beneficial to you. Financial coaching isn't judgmental and discouraging, but instead encouraging and informative. If you're on the fence with financial coaching or don't think you have the time, just an hour a week at your convenience, we can meet on Zoom and start working through some things, whether it be building a budget or trying to figure out what to do next. I want to encourage you to take advantage of this form of care that we offer. It will be worth your time. Your info will be kept confidential. No one else will know you're doing it unless you tell them. I look forward to hearing from someone this week about financial coaching. I'm praying for that. I'm here for you and want you to do well so that you can focus more on other things in life. One last thing, our church treasurer, which I really respect her, she shared with me a video this morning, and I had a chance to listen to some of it, and I got to a point, and I was listening to it, and I thought, yeah, this would be a good thing that could be helpful to share on the podcast today. And it's from a Andy Stanley sermon. In this, you can find it on YouTube, but he takes what another guy says about 5 things to do with your money, which is number 1, spend it; number 2, repay debt; number 3, pay taxes; number 4, save it; and number 5, give it. And really, a lot of us probably go through and do those things with our money in that order. And when you think about it, when that number 1, spend the money, the 5 things you do with money, you spend it, that's putting yourself first. That's what you're doing when that's the first thing you do with your money. Spend it, you're putting yourself first. And then number 2, repaying debt, you're putting the creditors second by doing that. And then thirdly, if you're paying, when you pay your taxes, if that's the third thing you do with your money in that order, you're putting the government third. And then saving your money, you're talking about number 4, you're putting, again, yourself fourth. So you're putting yourself first when you spend it and yourself fourth when you save it. And then number 5, giving it, you're putting others last in that situation. And I think I've mentioned this before. If I haven't, we want to make sure that our offerings to God and our help to others isn't just with our leftovers. It's not really a sacrifice. It's not really a form of worship to God when we just give Him our leftovers. We spend everything, and then if we have leftovers, we give out of that leftovers to God. That's really not a great way to live your Christian life. And so when you're handling your money this way, you're really not being a Christian. It's not Christ-like at all to do this. And I know that baby step 7 focuses on giving and the Ramsey steps, but even if you're not in the first baby step and you're a Christian, you should be giving. We use the 10% tithe as a guide to this is, this amount is God's, that we're giving back to Him as a form of worship, and then we give our offerings on top of of that, more money on top of that, in excess of that tithe. If you're in the situation right now where you just haven't given before or are giving very little, I just want to encourage you to pray about giving more. And the cool thing about that is when we do give more to God, even though it may not seem like a lot to you, you get to see God provide and bless in ways you would have never thought. And actually, when we talk about budgeting, and that's not really fun things a lot of times to talk about, leads to financial peace in the end, but sometimes it isn't fun, especially when you're in a situation to talk about budgeting and things. But when you give, that is one of the fun things about finances. And as you manage your finances well, the idea is you can get more and more and more. The wealthiest people in the world are definitely not the most generous. There's a reason that they have as much as they do, and it doesn't have to do with generosity. Even if they do give more dollar for dollar wise than you do, and they probably do for whatever reasons. But percentage wise, if you think about percentage wise of what you have and what you give as a percentage, that's a better way to measure generosity rather than the dollar amount. And so it is strange, right, when you think about this, because in churches, a lot of times that I've seen, and I think it's a reoccurring issue, is that people who have a lot in terms of resources, in terms of money, they tend to be, have this type of almost power in churches just by default of where, because of the amount they're giving and the amount they contribute, that they're able to weigh in more heavily on decisions. And the reality is, weirdly enough, is that for some of these people, percentage-wise, they might be giving a lot less than some of the other people in the church that maybe almost don't even have a voice in the church. So actually, maybe they're a lot less generous than these other people who don't have as much. And actually, generosity is more Christ-like than just having a lot. And so it's really interesting. If you step back and you think about it like that, like, wow, it's just something to ponder, to reflect on. I'm not trying to solve any things going on in your church, but just trying to draw, awareness to just because someone seems to be struggling or barely making ends meet doesn't mean that they're not generous. Maybe they're one of the most generous people in your church. And so, just don't get too caught up in that. But yeah, I think, I know giving is a way that we as Christians stand out. Giving with our time, our effort, our finances. And so, as a financial coach, I would ask you, to consider your giving, just to think on that. Would you like to give? Would that be something that, how much would you like to give? What percentage would you like to give? And try to coach you through giving as the Lord lays on your heart and leads on your heart. And that's just one of the things, one of the benefits of financial coaching. And that's helpful for any and every one of us, right? So this has been a really good podcast. I know that these topics can be difficult about finances, but I just want to encourage you not to be stressed about your situation, not to be ignorant of your situation, but just to get some financial coaching that's geared towards you and your situation, and will help you come up with a plan that works best for you in your situation, and provide some accountability in working through that. And so this has been the HeartWay podcast, where we seek to help with issues at the source. Until next time.